Hi, Matt with eTrailer. If you're looking for something that's going to be super versatile on the back of your 2022 Toyota Tacoma, where you need something for those work situations, and sometimes you need something for those more recreational situations, then the Yakima OverHaul is going to be a great option for you. So let's check it out. The reason why I say this is super versatile and is great for a lot of different uses is going to be because these are going to be some telescoping towers. So the position that we have it right now is this going to be sitting above our cab, but if we wanted to, we could actually lower this down to fit our needs. A couple of reasons why you might want it to be above your cab is for those longer items. So in those work situations, you might want something for those ladders, that lumber, anything that's not going to want to make contact with your cab, but also for those recreational uses too, because if you do have a longer kayak up here, that's going to stick out pretty far, so you're going to want something that sits above your cab too. Now, in some other situations, you might want this to sit a little bit lower because you're just trying to maximize what your bed can hold, and you want it to be a little bit easier to access gear that is on your crossbars. So I could lower this down, so if I wanted to access a box or a basket a little bit easier, I could. Or if I have a bike rack up here too, because lifting up something from this point is going to be much easier than lifting up something from this point. Let's check out all the parts that make up this system. So the first part is going to be our crossbars. They're going to be 68 inches long, and they're going to be our HD ones. And that's going to connect to our telescoping towers, and that's going to be on top of our bases. And our bases are going to use those track adapters to them too. So really focusing on the crossbar to start off with, we go to the very end, we're going to have this anchor point. This is going to be great for those cases uses where you do need to tie something off to. So like I mentioned earlier, if you have any kayaks, or if you want to tie down your ladders too. Next to that, we're going to have this T-track up here. And that's really going to benefit these crossbars a lot because a lot of clamp-on accessories might struggle to get around a bar this thick because it is an HD bar. And to really complement that T-track, we're going to have this built-in weather strip at the very top of it. You have to cut that down to size to fit your needs. And what I do like about that is it's also going to help reduce any wind noise, preventing that from getting in that channel, and it's going to prevent any debris from building up in there too. We'll have a secondary channel underneath, and what this is primarily used for is for your telescoping tower. Now, the telescoping tower, like I mentioned earlier, this can range from a lot of different heights to fit your needs, whether it's built above your cab or below your cab. And on the front of it, we're going to have 2 bolts. We'll have 2 more on the back. That's how you just raise and lower it, just by loosening those up. And on the inside, we're also going to have this anchor point. This anchor point is going to be really nice if you have anything inside your bed that you also need to tie off to or keep secured down. And the way this is going to grab on to our bed is via this base. This base is really nice on the bed of our truck. It looks really flush, very clean looking. And that's going to use adapters for our tracks to really secure into place too. And if we look on the side of this tower, we're going to have 2 holes. That's going to be on either end. And what that's designed for is if you want to add on to this later on, if you want to put a sidebar on here, just so you can really fully kit this out if you want to put on additional accessories to this rack. This will also come with 2 lock cores, so we can secure our bases so no one can come by and take our ladder rack. We're going to also get a few measurements on how this is going to sit up here. Now, I'm just going to really get a measurement of what it's going to be like above our cab, because like I said, this is adjustable to fit your needs. So if you are just trying to get above your cab, that's going to sit at right about 24 inches, which isn't too bad. It's going to give you plenty of clearance to clear your cab and really give you options on what you can carry at that point. Now, for the total distance that's underneath it, that's going to be just about 40 inches. And that's important to know because if you really do want to maximize the space in here, you want to see how tall the items can sit. So anything above 40 inches is going to be a real hassle getting in and out of here. And here on the side, you'll notice we have plenty of overhang, which is going to be perfect for those items that you don't want to reach as far into the center of your vehicle. Anything from ski carriers, bike racks, to even kayak carriers, because you don't want to try to grab anything from the center of your vehicle and take it off. And as far as the crossbar spread, that's going to be up to you, because the way we have this out here is pretty far apart. We weren't really quite trying to max it out, but get pretty close to that. And that's going to be at about 39 inches. So in all honesty, I'd recommend just maybe even bring that in just a tad bit. But at the end of the day, that's really going to depend on what your needs are. And this will be able to hold quite a bit. It's going to have a weight capacity of up to 500 pounds. Now, if you are off-roading, that's going to drop down to 300 pounds. It is important just to check the capacities of what you're carrying and also what your bed is rated for. But in most cases, I think this should be fine. Now, in my opinion, I think this is a great option if you are using this for a lot of different situations. Like I was talking about earlier, if you want to use it for work, for those ladders, lumber, or even if you want to use it for more recreational uses too, like maybe some overlanding, you want to throw a tent up there, kayaks, all types of things. Now, if you're looking for something just for those work situations, just to sit above your cab, then I'd recommend the Thule Track 1 ladder rack. Because what's nice about that is it's going to have a higher weight capacity, and it's just going to be a little bit simpler to use than this, since we don't have to worry about raising and lowering our towers. Now, if you're looking for something similar to this, but you don't need it to adjust, and you really don't mind it sitting below your cab, then I'd recommend the Yakima Outpost ladder rack, because it won't be adjustable, but have all the same features as this. But really, I think this is really neat how we have the ability to rise and lower, because in a lot of situations, if you are using this for recreational uses, you're probably going to want it above your cab. Now, as for the installation, the track adapters are a little weird working with at first, but if you are curious to see what that process looks like, just stay tuned and we'll walk you through it. To start off the installation, I recommend trying to lay everything out, keep everything organized for each tower you're working with. Now, if you look up, you'll notice we already have our front crossbars put in place and one of our towers for the rear one. Each one's going to be the same process, maybe with a few tweaks every now and then, but mostly the same. But to begin this process, let's start by prepping our base. What we're trying to do with our base is put this bracket with this bolt and a nut on. We want that to be on both sides, so I already installed one of them. So let me show you how to do the second one. So you're going to have two holes, one for one side that's going to be smaller, and one for the other side that's going to be longer. Same process for each one, but to do this, you're going to grab this longer bolt with the square washer on it, feed it through that channel, and then flip this around. You're going to grab this bracket, push this through this hole until it looks just like this. I like to try to hold mine. We're going to have this nut that's going to go in place here. But if I notice that I try to really thread that on, I can't, just because of the design of this clamp or bracket. So instead, I'm going to push that through, come over to the top, and just start by hand threading this. Now, I don't want to do this too much, just enough to really grab on, so I have a good fit. After when both of these are in place, then I can start putting it on my bed rails. Before we put that base up here, first we want to get this track ready. So what I'm going to do is just apply pressure to this end cap. We have this tab right here. You press down on, you remove that, set that to the side. And underneath my finger, you'll notice we do have this bolt. I've already loosened it up quite a bit. And the way you're going to do that is with your T30 Torx driver. Once you've loosened that up enough, you can unthread it by hand. There's going to be a second one. And that second one is going to be further down this track. I'll be able to find it right here. You do the same thing for that one too. Once those are both loosened up and taken out, you'll notice this track is going to have a little bit of give to it. At that point, we're going to grab this longer plate. Now you're going to put two per side on. That's going to be one for each tower. You will have some smaller ones in your kit. That's going to be for a different vehicle, so just make sure you're using the long ones. I'm just going to lift up on here, slide this through, and it is going to be a tight fit. That's okay. You just lift up, push it through, and with that in there, or grab those bolts and feed them back into place. The next stage is going to be placing your base on your bed or your bed rails. Now to do that, you just lift up, lay it down, and you want this to kind of be flush across that bed rail. And at this point, we want to try to line up these openings, these holes right here, to the holes on that plate we have underneath here. And it's going to be a little tricky sometimes, because when you're trying to put this bolt through one of these holes, sometimes it just won't reach far enough. So a trick that I found with doing that, if you do have that issue, is just kind of grabbing that plate and shifting it over until we find one of those bolts that we just installed. There it is right here. And we're going to place that plate right on top of there, just so when we do go to push this in, it's not going to push it too far back because we have that bolt bracing it. And when you are trying to get everything lined up, we want to make sure we're using the correct hole. So you notice we have 4 holes to choose from. We're going to have this one all by himself. We don't have to concern ourselves with that one. Instead, we want to focus on these 3 holes up here. We want to make sure we're using that bottom one. So I'm just going to push that through. We want to make sure we have 2 washers on this, and this plate with the teeth on it is facing towards this side that has teeth, so it really grabs on. I'm just going to lift that up a bit, trying to line up with the hole, and then thread it on. Now we don't want to tighten this too much, just enough to grab onto it. There we go, that's about good. And then we can repeat that process on the other side, only that's just going to be a little bit easier now. So everything's loosely in place. So what we want to do is check 2 things before you fully commit to this. So the first thing we want to check is to make sure we have the right bases for the right sides. So I want to make sure that I have a non-locking base on one side, and the way you can tell is it's going to have this regular looking bolt at the end of it, and your locking base will have a lock core at the very end of it. If you haven't put it on, it's going to have this longer bolt that sticks out a little bit more. It's going to be a little bit thinner too. We also want to make sure they're in the same location or same distance away from your bed, so we can make sure everything's square. So what I'd recommend doing is getting a tape measure, measuring from one point on your bed that's going to be fixed on both sides, and comparing where your base sits to that. So right now mine is sitting around 13 inches. One side I am going to have to adjust a bit. Then I'm going to check again and make sure it's even. And after that, I can tighten everything up. To do that, we're going to grab our 6mm Allen key. And I suggest starting with these ones that tighten to your track system itself. First, sometimes you might want to grab onto this bolt or bracket so it doesn't shift too much. Do the same thing on the other side. And when this is all ready, then we're going to shift up to our bolts up top. And we're going to use this large Allen key. And the way I recommend doing this is just tightening each side just a few rotations at a time so you don't get any weird fitment issues. And just trying to make sure everything stays pretty even. At this point, we're going to grab our towers and put them on your base. You want to make sure a couple things. So the orientation it is right now, we want to make sure that the bar is facing away from the interior of your bed on both sides. And we also want to make sure that it says Yakima facing away from your vehicle. And this is what it should look compared to each other. I recommend putting it in at an angle and letting it sit flat. Now you might run into an issue if your base is tightened all the way, it might get a weird fitment issue like this where it's not wanting to sit flush. What you have to do is loosen up that bolt at the very end just by threading it with your hand. Once that's loosened up, this should fit flat. You can come by, re-tighten that up, and then to finish it off, we're just going to grab a 6mm Allen key for your non-locking base, and then the smaller Allen key for your locking base. With all your towers installed, we can start moving over to our crossbar. So I like to make sure that the underside is facing up. You can tell because we're going to have this channel with this bolt that's showing through. We're actually going to loosen up that bolt with our smallest Allen key. When that's all the way loosened up, I'm going to flip it around so I can catch it. Just a little bit of an easier trick you can do to help you out. Move this end cap. Then we're going to grab 2 plates. We're going to feed that through this channel and slide them down. You want to make sure that this is more towards the inside. It's just going to make this process a little bit easier. With that done, we can move back to the end of our crossbar, grab an end cap, put it back on, and bolt it back into place. We're going to make sure we flip this crossbar around so the top is facing up. We have that weather strip facing up now. And we're going to place it roughly in the center of both these crossbars. After which, I'm just going to grab my tape measure from the end of our end cap to the end of the tower or crossbar. And I'm just going to make sure this is even on both ends. And then I can tighten everything into place. From this point, we're going to grab these smaller bolts. They're going to have 2 washers on them. We're going to feed it through this hole so it connects to those plates. Now the trick to those plates is sliding them down until we're almost there. Then I like to hold my bolt in place with my 6mm Allen key. Push it through a little bit through that opening until it's against that plate. And I'm going to keep pushing until it grabs onto that threaded part of the plate. Once it does, then I can tighten it down. Once this one's tightened completely, then I can grab my second bolt and put it in this location as well. And all you really have left to do is to grab your lock core, put it on, make sure it sticks on there. If it does, I also recommend just giving this a good shake test. Make sure nothing doesn't feel too loose. And if it feels good, then you can take it out for a ride. But that's just a look at the installation and some of the features of the Yakima OverHaul ladder rack on our 2022 Toyota Tacoma. I'm Matt. Thanks for watching.